On the chilling night of October 31st, 1998, two innocent children, Timmy and Jenny, embarked on a journey to their grandparents' house, nestled deep within the shadowy woods. They had been looking forward to a fun-filled Halloween evening, filled with spooky stories, laughter, and an abundance of candy. Little did they know that this night would unravel into a horrifying tale that would forever haunt their nightmares. As the moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie silhouettes through the trees, the children arrived at the old, creaky house. The wind whispered secrets through the gnarled branches, and the darkness seemed to seep from every corner of the house, chilling their young souls. Inside, their grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins, greeted them with warm smiles that did little to quell the shivers that danced down the children's spines. Timmy and Jenny had always been fond of their grandparents, but that night, something felt distinctly off. The grandparents led them into the dimly lit living room, where a fireplace crackled, casting flickering shadows upon the cracked walls. As the children cozied up on the worn-out couch, their grandparents began to recount tales of the woods surrounding their home. The stories were darker than the children had ever heard before, tales of restless spirits, malevolent creatures, and eerie disappearances. Hours passed, and the clock's ticking seemed to echo the beating of their hearts. Uneasiness settled in, making the room feel even colder. Timmy and Jenny shared a fearful glance, realizing that their grandparents' stories had morphed from harmless tales to something far more sinister. The elderly couple's behavior grew increasingly bizarre. They muttered incoherently to themselves and stared at the children with hollow eyes. In a terrifying moment, Mr. Jenkins turned to Timmy and said, "You remind me so much of your father." His words sent a shiver down Timmy's spine, for their father had died mysteriously years ago, an event they'd never discussed with their grandparents. Jenny, sensing danger, decided it was time to leave. She grabbed Timmy's hand and they made a hasty excuse to head to their room. As they tiptoed up the creaky stairs, the children could hear their grandparents muttering dark incantations below. The air grew thick with malevolence. In their room, Timmy and Jenny barricaded the door, hearts pounding in their chests. Outside, the wind howled like a banshee, and eerie shadows danced on the walls. It was a night of terror they could never have imagined, a Halloween they'd never forget. Suddenly, the bedroom window shattered, and a bone-chilling voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come here." The children turned to see a grotesque figure emerging from the darkness. It was a ghastly creature, half human and half beast, sent by the grandparents to capture them. With no other option, Timmy and Jenny leaped out of the window and dashed into the woods. The night was alive with horrors, as the forest seemed to conspire against them, every tree and rock becoming a monstrous apparition. They ran through the tangled underbrush, their breaths ragged, their footsteps echoing the heartbeat of a nightmarish symphony. As dawn broke, they stumbled upon a clearing in the woods, their strength depleted. It was there that they found an old, overgrown cemetery, where time-worn gravestones stood like sentinels, watching over forgotten souls. At the center of the graveyard was a massive oak tree with a sinister face etched into its bark. Just as they thought they had reached the end of their nightmare, they heard a voice emanate from the tree, an eerie, hollow voice that seemed to belong to their grandparents. It revealed a terrible truth. Their grandparents had made a pact with the malevolent spirits of the woods to ensure eternal life. The price for this dark deal was the souls of their own descendants. In a heart-wrenching twist, they realized that their grandparents had intended to sacrifice Timmy and Jenny to fulfill the sinister pact. The children were the key to the Jenkins family's unholy longevity. The malevolent spirits of the woods sought to claim their souls, and they would not rest until the price was paid. Timmy and Jenny, with tears in their eyes, knew they had to find a way to break the curse and free their family from the clutches of darkness. As they stood before the sinister tree, they decided to recite a counter-incantation they had discovered in an old family journal. With shaking voices, they chanted the words of power, calling upon the forces of light to sever the dark pact. A blinding light enveloped the cemetery, and the tree let out an ear-piercing wail. The spirits, furious at having their centuries-old scheme thwarted, were banished back into the shadows of the woods. The curse was broken, and the world was forever rid of the malevolent spirits and the grandparents who had made the dreadful pact. But the price was heavy, for Timmy and Jenny's innocence was forever lost, and their hearts bore the scars of that horrifying night. From then on, the old Jenkins house stood silent and empty, shunned by the townsfolk who could sense the lingering malevolence. The children, having survived a Halloween night that defied all imagination, carried the burden of their family's dark history with them, a twisted legacy that would haunt them for the rest of their days. And so, on the darkest of Halloween nights, when the wind whispers secrets and the shadows dance, the chilling tale of Timmy and Jenny and the evil that lurked in their grandparents' home is retold as a warning to all who dare to wander into the depths of the haunted woods. On the chilly moonlit night of October 31st, 1980, the Henderson family embarked on a fateful journey to their ancestral home, nestled deep within the heart of a quaint, desolate village. Tired of the relentless pace of their city lives, they yearned for a respite in the solitude of their family estate, a place where tradition ran deep and the whispers of ghostly legends seemed mere folklore. The Hendersons consisted of 5 members: Robert and Evelyn, the parents, and their 3 children, Emily, Michael, and young Sarah. With pumpkins carved and costumes meticulously assembled, they set out to celebrate Halloween in the most secluded and eerie corner of their family's history. Upon arrival, the house stood in all its grandeur, a relic of the past, surrounded by gnarled trees and whispering shadows. The air was thick with a kind of silence that only rural isolation can provide, and the family, bundled in heavy coats and lantern in hand, felt the weight of the night. The evening began with laughter and festivity as the family, driven by nostalgia and the desire to create a new tradition, explored the sprawling, cobweb-laden rooms of their ancestral home. Emily, dressed as a ghost, played pranks on her little sister Sarah, while Michael, dressed as a vampire, recounted the eerie stories of the house to terrify them all. As the night deepened, the wind outside grew more mournful, the darkness closing in like a vice. The Hendersons, exhausted from the journey, decided to retire to their rooms. Robert and Evelyn took the master bedroom while the children settled into their own, each adorned with antique furniture, creaky floorboards, and moth-eaten drapes that stirred with the unseen whispers of the house. In the dead of night, a sudden noise disturbed the calm. Sarah, the youngest, awoke to the faint sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway. She called out to her parents but received no response. Uneasy, she grabbed her stuffed rabbit and ventured out into the dimly lit corridor. With her heart pounding, she followed the eerie footsteps to her parents' room, where the door stood ajar. Trembling, she pushed it open, and her blood ran cold. The room was empty, devoid of life. The master bed was undone, the window wide open, and her parents' belongings scattered about the room. Panicked and fearing the worst, Sarah hurried to her siblings' rooms, only to discover they were equally abandoned. The terror that gripped her was suffocating, and she raced downstairs in search of safety. But the house seemed to have transformed into a labyrinth of winding hallways and secret passages. As she navigated the labyrinthine structure, the house seemed to come alive with eerie sounds and ghostly apparitions. Whispers of long-forgotten secrets danced through the walls. Shadows moved in ways that shadows should not, and an inexplicable sense of dread filled the air. Every attempt to escape was thwarted, as if the very house conspired to keep her within its confines. It was as though the old place hungered for her soul, a part of its dark inheritance. The night wore on, and Sarah's frantic search proved futile. Her family had vanished without a trace, swallowed by the malevolent maw of their ancestral home. As dawn broke, Sarah stumbled upon a hidden diary in a dusty attic corner, its brittle pages revealing the dreadful history of the house. A tale of curses, sacrifices, and a malevolent spirit bound to the estate. The family was never seen again, and the house stood abandoned, shrouded in darkness. Their story became a ghostly legend in the village, a cautionary tale for those who dared to venture too close. The Hendersons promised to never return to the family house, was one they could never break, for their souls were forever ensnared by the horrors lurking within its walls. And so, the Hendersons' Halloween night in 1980, once filled with hope and nostalgia, transformed into a harrowing and tragic tale of terror. A story of a family torn asunder by the sinister legacy of their own ancestral home, a legacy that left a permanent scar on the village, a scar that still haunts the memories of those who dare to remember the Hendersons and the house that swallowed them whole. In the remote town of Kiruna, nestled deep within the woods, the Smith family had recently moved into a charming old house. The family consisted of John and Lisa, a loving couple, and their innocent infant, Hope. The house was a beautiful, albeit eerie, colonial mansion with tall, looming trees surrounding it. Little did they know, their lives were about to take a chilling and tragic turn. Everything seemed perfect at first. The Smiths thought they had found their dream home. However, their joy soon turned to despair when they noticed something was amiss with Hope. She was a healthy baby when they moved in, but her condition rapidly deteriorated. The once bubbly and playful child turned pale and weak. Lisa and John were frantic, taking her to every doctor in town, but no one could determine the cause of her illness. As the days passed, Hope's condition worsened, and her cries of agony filled the house, echoing in the empty halls. As Halloween approached in 1991, the Smiths hoped for a reprieve from their child's suffering. However, little did they know that this Halloween would mark the beginning of a nightmare. On the night of October 31st, an eerie chill settled over Kiruna. The family, desperate for a cure for Hope, had invited a renowned psychic, Madame Lorraine, to their home. The old woman had a reputation for communicating with spirits and unraveling mysteries that haunted families. The seance was set up in the dimly lit, creaking attic. Lisa held Hope in her trembling arms as they sat around the table. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the wind outside howled in a mournful chorus. Madame Lorraine began her incantations, calling out to the spirits, trying to make contact with the other side. Suddenly, the temperature in the room plummeted, and a sinister presence seemed to engulf them. Hope's cries grew louder, and the lights flickered ominously. From the shadows emerged a ghastly figure, a childlike specter with hollow eyes. The room felt heavy with sorrow, and Hope's crying intensified as the entity moved closer. Lisa and John were frozen in terror, unable to move. Madame Lorraine, her voice trembling, spoke with the spirit, asking what it wanted. The specter, in a raspy voice, whispered, "My name is Emily. I lived in this house long ago. My parents abandoned me and I died here, alone and in pain. I want a family, a real family." The room filled with an overwhelming sadness as Emily's presence grew stronger. Hope's condition seemed to mirror the spirit's anguish. Lisa, tears streaming down her face, whispered, "We'll be your family. We'll take care of you." Emily's face contorted into a twisted smile, and with that, she merged with Hope, the child's cries slowly subsiding. It was as if Hope had absorbed Emily's spirit into her own. Madame Lorraine, drained and horrified, ended the seance, but it was too late. The Smiths' lives were forever changed. Hope, now inhabited by Emily's tormented spirit, seemed to recover physically, but her personality had altered. She spoke with Emily's voice and exhibited a disturbing knowledge of the past that only the deceased could possess. The family tried to adapt, but their new life was far from normal. Emily's presence haunted the house, and her sinister influence grew stronger with each passing day. The once loving family had become a macabre version of itself, as they were forced to cater to the whims and demands of the spirit they had unwittingly adopted. Years went by, and the once happy home became a prison of despair. Emily's malevolence grew, and her influence spread like a cancer, extending to the Smiths' sanity. The once bright eyes of John and Lisa grew hollow and haunted as they became slaves to the vengeful spirit. The Halloween night in 1991 had set into motion a chain of events that would forever torment the Smith family. Their dreams of a peaceful life had turned into a living nightmare, and the house that was once filled with hope and love was now a cursed dwelling, home to a family that was lost to the darkness of the past.